So welcome everybody. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
We are at the February 10th Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee meeting. Everyone should be connected via audio. Those that have called in, you're going to be automatically be muted, but there will be time later that we can unmute you for comment. This presentation is recorded. We post it to the county's solid waste and recycling webpage within 1 week. If you have any questions this evening, you can submit those through the Q&A section. Additionally, if you've called in, we'll unmute and allow time for comment that way as well. If you are having any technical difficulties, please reach out to Zoom. Oops, really fast there. This evening, we are supporting this meeting with translation services. You can select Spanish or English. If you hover over the lower area of the keyboard, it will pop up an interpretation icon, and then you can select your room preference from there. Just some ground rules on public comment. Only the committee chair may recognize a public attendee. You can raise your hand or drop something into the Q&A feature. There's designated times on the agenda. Once you've been recognized, you'll be permitted to speak on the subject. There could be a limit to the time permitted. And if new business arises or suggested in the public comment period, we can place that on the next meeting's agenda. And with that, I will turn the meeting over to the chair. Thank you.
Ask a real quick question, logistic question, Aaron. Should we be in, if we don't need Spanish, should we be in the English room or the off for translation if we want to be able to hear Myra's translation?
It should be off,
Okay.
but they've changed some settings since we were here in December. So if you're not hearing, you may need to switch into the English room, but I practiced in the off room and it was just fine earlier this evening.
Thank you.
And I'm in the off room and I'm hearing fine. Welcome all. I'm Ken Foote, chair, and we'll get right into this. We normally start with an introduction and a roll call. It's hard when you're not sitting around a table, so I can just sort of point at you and go around. But if the county people would introduce themselves first, and then we'll go through the committee members. So Aaron.
Hi, Aaron Stein. I'm with Washington County Solid Waste and Recycling. I'm the operations supervisor. And
Megan?
I'll pass.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sure, I'm Megan Schuler. I'm the Education and Outreach Supervisor with Washington County Solid Waste and Recycling, and I'll pass it to Ricardo.
You're on, Ricardo.
Good evening, Chair, Board. Ricardo Palazuelos, Solid Waste and Recycling, Education Staff.
Tom.
Evening, everybody. My name is Tom Eggleston. I'm the non-voting member of the Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee and the Solid Waste and Recycling Division Manager. Thank you.
And Peter. I don't know you. Are you a county employee or the?
I'm a new committee member.
Committee. Okay, we'll come back to you.
Yeah.
So I'll go next, Ken. I think I'm the last
Kathy, you're
one.
next.
Hi, Kathy Folsom with Washington County. I am a senior policy coordinator with the Solid Waste and Recycling staff.
Okay, now you're on, Peter.
Hi, it's Pete Pastors, and I'm a, as I said, new member of the committee. I live in unincorporated Washington County.
Can you give us a thumbnail of your background and what brought you here?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I have been doing solid waste work professionally since the early 1980s. Worked in different parts of the country and came here to Oregon about 9 years ago and work at the Oregon DEQ at this time.
Thank you. Ashvin?
Ashvin Nagaraja. I'm a public member.
Vinod?
Vinod Singh, industry member. For those of you who we just met, I work for a processor of recyclables, living in unincorporated Washington County.
Okay. Myra Hernandez? You're still muted. Unmute.
¿Me escuchará?
Yes.
Okay. Mi nombre es Mayra Hernández, soy parte del comité de asesoramiento. Simplemente.
Thank you. Kathy? There you go.
So did you mean Kathy Christie, Ken, or you mean me again?
No, I meant, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm confused and old. Hannah Carlson?
Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm a Portland State University student as well as a part-time employee, and I live in Banks, Oregon. I am a new, this is my second garbage and recycling committee meeting, so happy to be here.
Okay, and do we want to introduce to Sandra? Sandra, I'm not hearing anything and no picture. I'll take it on faith that she can hear. And let's do Kathy Christie. Kathy? Unmute. Okay, well, I've got both their names here and I've got Kathy unmuted, but I'm not hearing her. Okay, let me find my agenda again. So Tom, you want to do program updates, please?
Yes, thank you, Ken. And I will just note that when Myra introduced herself, I had to click over to the English on the translation to be able to hear the simultaneous interpretation. So if y'all
Thank you, I'll do that.
Okay. So thank you. Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all. Happy 2022. Already a month or so into it, and it's crazy that we're already in 2022. So couple quick updates for the solid waste division. Business food scraps requirement is a program that has been in the works for quite a while. It came through this committee in 2019 and it was approved by the Board of Commissioners in the summer of 2019. It was originally slated to go into effect March 31 of 2020. However, the pandemic delayed the implementation of that program. So that program does require certain large food generating businesses within the county to separate food from their garbage and sign up for food scraps collection services. So that program is slated to begin implementation this March with a March 31st notification date. We'd also remember that last rate review, your committee recommended and the board approved a bundled food scraps collection service, which means as of April 1st, 2022, businesses that sign up for garbage service are also entitled to food scraps collection services and recycling collection services as part of their bundled service. So similar to your residential collection, when you get garbage, recycling and yard debris / composting comes along with it. And in this setting, businesses will also be getting a similar service suite. So we're looking forward to that. I know the education team has been working really hard on developing an implementation plan and getting ready to roll out that new mandate. It's going to be an exciting opportunity to get back out into the community and work with our businesses and get some more food out of the landfill. There's a lot of material and a lot of opportunity for some diversion there. Rate review season is starting. It seems like it never ends. It's kind of like budgeting. It's like you're either in rate review or you're getting ready for rate review, but rate review season will kick off officially in March 15th for staff when the detailed cost reports are due back to staff. We will be working with your committee over the next couple meetings to talk about rate review. Aaron will be prepared to do a rate review primer in an upcoming meeting. We'll also talk about some work we're doing on a low income rate research project that you all have already heard about, and we'll kind of bring some updates back on that. And then also prepare for the actual rate review recommendation that will come to your committee in May of this year. We are also doing some strategic planning work in the solid waste division. So we have engaged with some consultants, the Metropolitan Group, which is a consultant agency that specializes with nonprofit and public sector organizations, kind of doing mission-driven work and consulting. They're going to be supporting us developing a solid waste and recycling division strategic plan to really kind of zone in and focus in on some priority initiatives for our team and our organization. We are planning to engage you all as an advisory committee in that process. And so we're looking to bring a kind of a working session here to this committee in the next couple meetings as well with our partners from Metropolitan Group. It's also budget season for the county and Metro and everybody that's making budgets in the public sector. So we've been doing a lot of work preparing our budgets. This year is really challenging because as an organization, the county, and especially as a department, Health and Human Services, has been doing a lot of work in COVID-19 response and managing the CARES Act and the ARPA funding, which is increased federal funding allocations that are impacting our organization and giving our organization the ability to do new work that we haven't done in the past in COVID-19 recovery. So that increases the challenges for budgeting and it kind of drags out a lot of the timelines and adds a lot of complexity when new resources are injected into the budgeting process. We do anticipate receiving additional funding from Metro, mainly in the resumption of the additional funding that was allocated to support the business food scraps requirements. So when Metro adopted the program, they had initially allocated 2 FTE worth of funding to Washington County for implementation. So those staff would be out in the field doing that work. When the program was delayed, that funding was reduced by 50%. And so we actually lost an FTE last fiscal year before, and we are anticipating a resumption of that position and those funding back to the organization this coming fiscal year. So we're hopefully going to be doing some recruiting for a new team member to help us with that effort, and then also kind of working that into our budget as we move forward. So I also had asked our Brad Anderson, our counsel, to be here with us today, and I don't see him. There's a phone number. I don't know if that's Brad. Is there any way to tell?
Only if they talk to us.
Well, let's see. Oh, hello, phone number. Are you Brad Anderson? Hello, if you're on the phone, you're unmuted. Can you introduce yourself?
It's Kathy.
Oh, okay. Hey, Kathy. Well, at least you're in the meeting now too. So that's good. That was a good happenstance.
I've been listening. I
Okay.
know. I'm sorry.
No, you're
I'm
good.
sorry. I didn't know about how to do this. Yeah. Okay.
No, thank you very much. So Brad wasn't able to make it today. I know he was out of town, but he was thinking he might be able to call in. So we appreciate the time. But I just wanted Brad to talk a little bit to the committee about the guidance that we sent out earlier this month related to the current litigation the county is involved in. So as you all should be aware, there is some litigation regarding the county's decision related to expanded recycling and non-regulated service providers, namely Ridwell. And we are asking the advisory committee members to refrain from making comments or speculating on that decision or that action. This is pending litigation, and I think it's really important that you all understand that as advisory committee members, you are public officials under Oregon state law, and that opens you up to the public records process for issues related to this. So it's an issue that is going to be coming in, and we will have more guidance from our counsel and our attorneys as this progresses through the process. I don't really have much more to say on it because I'm not an attorney, but I want to just make sure that if you have any questions or concerns, that you know that we're here for you, and you can reach out to us and we can make sure that you have the advantage or the ability to speak to our counsel if you need to have some advice or you're interested in what that means for you individually and as a member of the GRAC. I will say that we would want to make sure that everybody reviews the bylaws for the committee, and in particular, there's some bylaws related to speaking on behalf of the committee in public forums, and just make sure that you understand that as a committee member, unless the committee has approved by motion that you speak on behalf of the committee, that you refrain from doing that as the bylaws require.
And state law, that's pretty well spelled out. SWAC can't say any. SWAC is an artificial entity, or GRAC in this case. Unless we are in a properly noticed meeting, nothing we do counts for anything. And being a member on GRAC gives you no special accommodation. GRAC will pass a formal statement if we have a statement to make, and it has to get voted on and sent out that way. And individual members should not be touting that they are members of GRAC and speaking on behalf of either GRAC or the county.
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, so like I said, any questions about that, we're happy to chat offline and try to make sure you have any questions answered that you need help with. So that's it for my updates. We can go ahead and move on to the first oral communication section, Ken, and see if there's anybody out there.
So has anybody signed up for oral communications? I'll take that as a no.
I
There are no-
see, we have a hand raised,
Oh, who's?
but no Q&A.
Well, let's go forward with the hand raised then. Who has a hand raised? Let me look.
It's Caleb Weaver, and I can allow to talk just one moment.
Okay, because I don't see him on here at all. Oh, here we go. Caleb Weaver down here in the hand raise. Go ahead, Caleb.
Hi, everybody. Hope you all can hear me. My name is Caleb Weaver, and I work for Ridwell. And I just appreciate the opportunity to say a few words today in advance of the presentation that you all are going to be receiving on the survey around expanded recycling services. And really appreciate the work that went into sort of examining what the interest is among the community in the types of services that Ridwell offers, and really excited to see the really strong response that was received. And I think, again, while it was self-selecting and certainly there's parts of the community where more outreach is needed and greater access is going to be very important, I think that survey certainly shows a very strong interest among the community in ways that they can, to have the opportunity to do more. And it's really critical that the franchise services are available to provide the baseline service, but that people really are interested in being able to do more and are interested in new ideas and new ways to help reduce the amount of waste that they're putting into a landfill. And so with that in mind, again, we just encourage you all to really think hard about whether the expanded recycling services are restricted to the monopoly providers, or if the county is going to adopt a position of being more open to innovation and new ideas, and welcoming new companies and new ways of addressing the parts of the materials that are not part of the franchise haulers service or the certificate haulers service. And I think there's a lot of advantages in really making progress toward our shared goals by allowing a little bit more freedom and innovation instead of restricting things, restricting opportunities just to the franchise haulers. So appreciate everybody's continued work on this really important committee, and thank you all for your time.
Any others? Hands up. You need to click the remove. There you go. Thank you. Okay, let's go forward.
All right, next action item. We have no action items this evening, so the next item on the agenda is other items, and we will give an additional recycling collection services program update. And then I will start that off, and then I will hand it off to Megan to do the presentation regarding the survey and the survey findings. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of talk through an update for you all, because it's been a couple months since we met. The last committee meeting was December 9th, and at that time we talked about the additional recycling services program and options. Since then, the county and the board, as you all are likely aware, heard a lot of feedback from community members and different community stakeholders, and requested that staff bring a work session topic to the board commissioners at their January 18th meeting. That meeting was held on Tuesday, January 18th. That was within 1 week of the regularly scheduled GRAC meeting in the early January. So we went ahead and canceled the meeting in order for the board to have an opportunity to weigh in on the topic before we had further deliberations, because we knew there was interest at the board. So in that work session, the board asked staff presented a variety of options. It was a presentation very similar to the one we delivered in December to this committee. We presented the kind of background of the situation, the background of the additional recycling opportunities that are out there, the materials that are in our waste stream, the waste composition, some of the options for regulatory approaches to managing the additional recycling materials in our system. In that work session, the board did direct staff very clearly to develop a new collection program and to make sure that community members have access to recycling collection services for additional items that are not historically included or not currently included in our curbside recycling program. So the board did request that this service be made available through a new program that's made available through our regulated solid waste collection companies. And they also requested that until such a time a new service is available, that the county temporarily adjust its rules to allow other businesses to provide a similar service. So that action was brought back on January 25th, so the next week, to the board. And the board did vote unanimously to approve temporary rules that were added to the solid waste and recycling administrative rules. Those temporary rules mean that any business right now, other than the certificate holders, can currently collect materials for compensation that are not part of the standard curbside collection program. So we understand Ridwell has resumed their services, and they are authorized to do that under the new temporary rule. The temporary rule was conditioned to be repealed or sunset once the regulated service providers develop a program and that service option will be available to community members. Staff are continuing to work on a proposal, and we're going to be bringing that back to you officially next month as an action item to review administrative rules and potential rates for such a program and request a recommendation that you all may deliver to the Board of Commissioners. So there were some questions about why taking this approach. The board was clear in that they heard a significant amount of community member interest in additional recycling services through a variety of channels, including the survey that Megan's going to share, direct contact from Board of Commissioners, and then a bunch of emails from an email campaign that was initiated. The board,
and I might comment that was initiated at the behest of and with encouragement from Ridwell on their own behalf, a very self-serving bit of political activity. This is not a neutral activity.
So the board wanted to ensure that any services that are made available met a certain criteria. They wanted to make sure that all community members that are within the designated area that the service would be provided have equal, fair, and consistent access to the full suite of garbage and recycling collection services. That was the equity of access was one of the big issues the board was very concerned about and wanted to make sure they had influence over. They wanted to make sure that any new programs that are initiated follow the necessary regulatory safeguards that all of the rest of our recycling and solid waste collection services follow, ensuring that vehicles are properly insured, that employees are properly compensated, that all of the rules and regulations that the current providers follow are also followed in this system. They also wanted to ensure that all the garbage and recycling services are delivered at fair, just rates, and that the board has the ability to set those rates and influence those rates. And they also wanted to make sure that any new programs that are developed in the county and under the county's authority incorporate the vision and values of the 2030 Regional Waste Plan. So what's next? Next steps here, the county is working on a draft framework that will incorporate an additional recycling services program into our solid waste administrative rules, which would be delivered by our regulated service providers. We're currently in the process of drafting those rules, and we'll be working to build a rate model that would go along with those rules as well. We're planning to return to the committee in March, as I noted earlier, March 10th, with an action item for that. And we would also hope to send out draft administrative rules for you all to have your hands on and review towards the end of next week, hopefully, once they're ready to kind of go out. So you have a little bit of time to chew on them and ask questions and provide feedback to us. And then following the committee's input in March, staff will be bringing the action item back to the Board of Commissioners. Oops, excuse me. We are anticipating an April 12th work session with the board and an April 26th action item with the board. And then the current proposal is that if that is adopted and approved, it would be a July 1st new program implementation. So I do have a outline from a slide that was in the board presentation from January 18th. Sorry, a lot of dates here. And I can share that with you and kind of walk through what the proposal is. This was the proposal made by the Haulers Association, and this is the proposal that is building on the base of the program design. So this is not the program itself, but this is kind of the initial proposal. So I'm going to go with screen share real quick and walk through it with you. Make sure I know how to do it. Can you all see it?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So this proposal was, like I mentioned, on the January 18th work session. We went through this with the Board of Commissioners, and they were favorable to it generally. There were some questions and concerns, and we're trying to address some of those. I also would say that the January 18th and the January 25th meetings are posted on our website. If you go to the hot topics section on the solid waste and recycling website, you can actually view the recordings from those meetings and see the discussion and view the conversation and view the presentation. So that's worth watching if you haven't done that yet. Would encourage you to do so. So the proposal for expanded recycling collection services has two phases to it. The first phase is focused on single family up to 4-plex customers. These are historically what we call our residential customers, who are direct payers of garbage bills. So anybody over a 5-plex is often in a relationship where their landlord or the property manager is responsible for the garbage bill and is the direct customer to the garbage company in most instances. So this initial launch of the program is for folks that have direct kind of service relationships with the collection services. The first part of the proposal is adding household batteries to the standard curbside collection service. So that's a little bit broader than even an additional recycling collection program that would be across the board. So all customers in Washington County that have glass recycling service would have the ability to put batteries on top of their glass bin in a Ziploc bag, and that would be collected and taken off for recycling. And it's important to note that those materials would actually be recycled. There is some, battery collection programs that don't necessarily even recycle batteries, but even just pulling them out of the waste stream, pulling them out of the roll carts, out of the garbage trucks, and making sure they don't end up at the MRFs is a huge advantage to the system, because they cause fires and they're dangerous when they're kind of rolling around in the system. So that is part of the proposal. The other part is there would be a collection program for additional items in a separate container or a separate covered bin that would be initially available to all urban unincorporated residential customers. This separate bin would be an optional collection service that residents could sign up for, just like their garbage service is today. So if you wanted to, say, request an additional yard debris roll cart, that's an additional service that is an optional service for someone to sign up for. So this would be a service offering available to folks that wanted to pay a little extra to sign up for an additional program. The additional items would include compact fluorescent light bulbs, plastic film, and textiles. We're also having conversations about rigid plastic clamshells as being a program element for that as well. The customers would be able to request a pickup every 2 weeks, but would not be required to have pickups every 2 weeks. The cost would be separate from the curbside program. So if you didn't sign up for the service, you wouldn't be paying for the service. If you did sign up for the service, you would pay for the service. And there would be a separate charge on your bill. The current estimate on a service rate model is that there would be a base fee of around $4 to $5 to participate in the program that helps pay for assets in the field, helps set up accounts and systems for subscribers. And then every time a pickup is requested, there would be a $9 to $11 pickup fee for the collection of those services. So it allows the customer to control how often pickups come and what their ultimate bill is. We are also really interested in addressing the service equity issue in terms of who has access to the services, and multifamily communities are one of those communities that are challenging to serve in this sense. And we understand that it's something that the communities want access to. So we're really interested in making sure that there's a phase 2 to this program that would be the development of a multifamily service option. And what that looks like, we're not too sure yet. We're kind of hoping that we can set a time certain in our rules and then spend some time working towards building that program out, but making a hard commitment to that up front. So that's kind of the overview. And Hannah, I see you have your hand up. I'd be happy to, I'm going to stop sharing so we can see each other better. Happy to answer any questions about that.
Yeah, I just wanted to grab clarification or perhaps an example of urban unincorporated. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, good question. So Washington County has 2 zones, I guess I would call it. Urban unincorporated and rural unincorporated. And service standards are different in urban and rural zones. Right now, the urban unincorporated community customer base has access to yard debris collection services as part of their bundled service. Rural does not, and that's largely for a variety of reasons. For the rural service, the lots are usually larger. A 60-gallon roll cart for yard debris is not going to do much in a rural setting. There's also factors in rural collection services where the time between stops is much greater than the time between stops in urban settings. So the cost of delivering services is much more expensive in the rural community. So part of the method of controlling costs is just to providing a little bit of a different suite of services available. Initially, this program is envisioned to kind of start and roll out urban, and then we'll do some more work to understand whether there's demand for the service in rural areas, and then understand what the cost would be. We're a little concerned about the cost prohibitive nature of serving rural areas. Right now, the garbage program is really set up across the county, and a good example, we have Manning, Timber, or some of these really far distant rural areas, and those community members get garbage and recycling services, and that the cost of delivering that service is much more expensive than what they're paying, but the system is built to be a system where everybody has access to those services at reasonable rates. So that's an evaluation to consider. And the definition of what's the rural urban line is the metropolitan service district boundary, which is in lay terms Metro's regional boundary. So Metro is an urban boundary. It is similar to the urban growth boundary, but a little bit different, and it gets very confusing when you start trying to map out the differences between the MSD and the UGB, but that's the boundary.
So if I can add something here, Tom, this is very similar to the enhanced sheriff patrol that the urban unincorporated areas vote on, and it's a separate line item in an election, every 3 years or so, that we provide for our own enhanced sheriff service, which essentially means the sheriff is now a local police department in the unincorporated urban areas like Reedville, between Beaverton and Hillsborough, or Aloha.
Yeah, it's a good example, Ken. And the ESPD levy will be up for renewal this year. There's my first plug.
Okay,
any other questions about that before I hand it off to Megan to go through the community survey? I think this is an important part of the community survey. We really want to make sure that we're listening to folks and building something that is incorporating feedback and building something that will kind of address some of the wants and needs. Take it away, Megan.
All right, I am going to move some things around and share my screen. Give me just 1 minute. All right, can you guys see that okay?
Yep, you're on.
All right. Well, good evening. I'm happy to be here tonight to share the results of our survey. As a reminder, we developed and promoted the survey in partnership with the cities of Beaverton and Hillsborough. The survey was conducted in English and Spanish, and it was open November 21st through December 19th. I want to start by sharing what we aim to learn. I want to pause for just a minute. Is this blocking? Is there the captioning notice blocking the screen, or is that only for me?
I can see it too, Megan, but it looks okay. I can still see the header.
All right, thank you. So I want to summarize what we aim to learn through the survey. We were looking to learn the level of community interest in additional recycling service. We wanted to know how that interest corresponded with the potential cost of service, which materials and collection frequency individuals were interested in, and whether our low-income, multifamily, and BIPOC communities would be interested in or benefit from this service. And I'll note that we knew survey results would gather input from a limited sample from the community, and it would be an opportunity just to hear from those who opt in to participate. But that those initial results could offer some guidance, and we hope to hear from a broad range of community members. We heard from 2,113 individuals. We had a really strong response, and those responses were well distributed across the county. 33% of respondees fell below the median family income level for Washington County. 7% indicated that they speak a language other than English at home. 1%, 23 individuals, completed this Spanish language survey, which is not a high percentage of responses, but I think it's important to note that this is high in comparison to other county conducted surveys. And we were really pleased to hear from folks through that Spanish language survey. And 8% of individuals live in multifamily homes. The majority of respondents, 96%, expressed interest in additional recycling collection service, with only 4% saying no, that they weren't interested. We looked to see how that interest corresponded with potential cost of service. And the survey presented monthly price ranges, which you can see here at the bottom on the x-axis. So prices ranging from $0 to $5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, and 15 to 20. And the graph shows the percentage of respondents by income on the y-axis here on the side that were very or somewhat interested at each price range. So we saw a high level of interest in the $0 to $5 price range there in green, and still had over 50% expressing interest at the $6 to $10 price range in blue. And you can see that the interest dropped significantly at price points higher than $11 there in gray and black. Several write-in comments expressed concern about the overall cost of waste and recycling service and the additional expense of collection service described. Many individuals expressed displeasure over recent rate increases and disinterest in paying more on top of that for additional recycling services. We also asked about existing practices of respondees. So folks, there's existing collection options for the items that we're asking about. That includes subscription curbside collection service and drop-off locations. Most of the survey respondents, 74%, said they currently take these items to a recycling depot, and 15% were already participating in a curbside collection program. We asked individuals to rank 9 materials that they'd like to see collected from 1 to 9, with 1 being the most important item. The items listed here were the ones most frequently ranked in the top 3. And plastic bags and film and plastic takeout clamshells ranked significantly higher than the other items here. Other materials that were on that list included compact fluorescent light bulbs, books, textiles, and other polystyrene items like CDs and plastic cutlery. Individuals could also write in additional materials, and the items most commonly suggested included electronics, bulky materials, hazardous items, sharps, and medication. And many individuals took this opportunity to express interest in food scraps collection as well. We asked folks about what collection frequency they were interested in. 64% expressed interest in monthly collection service over every other week collection. And in the comments, several individuals suggested that quarterly or twice yearly collection would be sufficient for the amount of materials that they generate. Several individuals suggested that establishing a more conveniently located depot for collection would also be an effective solution. And while the survey was open, Washington County Solid Waste and Recycling staff also collaborated with Centro Cultural's Promotores Ambientales to engage community members that may be less familiar with the concept of additional recycling collection service. And as I'm sure you all are aware, promotores are trained staff who are paid to conduct culturally relevant engagement within their community. Feedback was provided by community members through informal discussion, and community members were also directed to the survey to have their voice represented in these findings as well. And some of the things we heard through the informal discussion was a desire to focus on reducing waste, a concern that the service does not necessarily benefit individuals who are in apartments, or concerned that it might not as designed. Questions as to whether producers or stores could pay for this service. And that was a theme we heard in the survey as well, that several folks expressed that consumers shouldn't pay for this, that the responsibility should be on producers and retailers. So I'll close there and open it up for questions, and I can stop sharing. See if you all have questions about those responses.
So Aaron, do you see other hands besides what we see on our committee? Aaron? There you go.
All right, I have too many screens. Yes, we have Jacob in the audience with his hand up. One moment.
Let's make sure we get committee members to be able to ask questions first, if that's possible. Go ahead, Jacob. I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt your train of thought.
No, that's fine. I had some questions about the survey, and then I also wanted to know if I should just wait till the very end to ask all my questions. And that's fine. I can defer to the committee and staff.
Okay, Peter, you want to go ahead?
Sure, just a couple of questions. I probably know the answer to the first one, but why was the survey not a random representation of the county's population instead of a self-selection survey?
Yeah, this was something that we implemented to get just a quick pulse on those that, knowing that this would be a service that folks could opt in for, just to see kind of what that initial interest might be. And Tom, I don't know if you want to speak to that as well.
Yeah, Pete, thanks. It's a really good question. You know, we talked about a random survey, and the process for kind of developing, putting out a statistically significant random sample survey is a lot more involved than putting out kind of a self-selection survey. So we're just trying to get some input and feedback from folks that we presumed were already interested in solid waste services. So those folks were folks that were seeing this through our newsletter or through Facebook or through other channels, through the city newsletters and those kinds of things. We didn't necessarily have the budget or the time to go out and engage with a survey research group to do a statistical sampling survey. We've done that in the past, and it's a great opportunity to learn more about the services in general. And I don't think we can draw conclusions that if we put this thing out there, 96% of the base is going to sign up for it. So we need to take everything we're seeing, especially in terms of the sign up interest, with that grain of salt, very much so.
Sure, yeah. And I think, unfortunately, people don't always appreciate that nuance, and they see numbers and they just assume that, like a lot of poll numbers, these are real numbers. So just a caution there. And I assume that their cost and time is usually the reason why folks can't do it in the parameters they're working with. The other question I had was regarding understanding from folks who said they want the service, why they want it. In other words, what's their motivation? What drives them to this need? Which, when I listened to the work session, there was a lot of expression on the part of the commissioners about hearing this need from community members. But do we understand what the motivation is for this need? In other words, is there, what's the goal for it? And one would hope that it would be environmental protection, I guess. But, it would be interesting to understand if that's really what the motive is, because I think as alluded in the work session, there is some opportunity for education around this for folks to understand what some of the trade-offs and choices really imply in terms of environmental impact.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Megan, do you have anything to that? We talked about that up front some.
Yeah, I'll just share what we heard in the survey, and that and it's consistent with what our field staff kind of hear from folks in engagement, and that interest in getting these materials recycled is largely driven by a desire to do best by the environment and honor personal values in that arena. And then for folks in this survey, knowing that 75% of folks already are taking materials to depot, the convenience factor was the other thing that was commonly noted.
Yeah, and I think you point out something really important, Pete, that is, as we start looking at our materials programs more holistically through materials management framework, we start thinking and seeing things a little bit differently, and I tried to introduce the concept of sustainable materials management at the work session, and really understanding the value of upstream work and reuse and reduce and repair, and really trying to benefit and leverage those services a little bit more. This is a program that is a downstream recycling solution program, and it's something that is targeting a pretty small segment of the waste stream. We certainly are hearing that community members are very interested in this service. So there's a balance to be made from a public agency in terms of providing services that the community demands, but also trying to provide the service that we think makes the biggest environmental impact, because that's ultimately our goal and our mission. But we also do need to make sure that we provide these core services and the services that are being demanded by the community members. So it is a neat balance. And I'm hopeful that as we continue to work in education and outreach, and we continue to stretch our services upstream and start talking more about materials management and more about food waste prevention, and with the new EPR program coming online, we can have some of those conversations that are more intentional in terms of trying to help bring the community along with us. There's also, what we see a lot in the community, and I think we see it a lot in this conversation, is this visceral aversion to landfilling. And I understand that, because we've been, teaching individuals to keep things out of the landfill for 25 years as an industry. And we're learning more and more that that's not maybe always the best thing to do. Landfills are a necessary component of our waste management system. We would rather, I think we would rather landfill something here in a well-protected, environmentally regulated landfill than to send it overseas to a market that we don't really know what's happening to it to be recycled, quote unquote. So there's a lot of considerations, and there's a lot of information that we need to work on, making sure that community members are coming along on this journey with us. And I think that's an important lesson learned so far through this conversation.
So I want to comment, because I'm somewhat cynical, that Ridwell has done a particularly good job of basically gaming the system to, and in fact, that's the whole complaint about Ridwell, is that they're working on what is characteristically referred to as the Uber model, coming in and essentially saying, up yours, you can't control us. And, it's a somewhat offensive approach. That said, a self-selecting survey in a well-run PR system like Ridwell has means that their customers get some kind of notice that they need to respond to this if they are selected to receive the questionnaire. They need to respond, which skews the results from what we get when we stick something on them. And I think we would find politically that imposing a program on people, anything other than free, or obviously under $5, will be met with a certain amount of pushback and resistance. And I want to remind people that by going the route of a self-selecting questionnaire, you only get the people that are really interested and proponents of that. And it's true in any industry. It's not just waste hauling. You can really skew the results if you go out and ask if people think there should be airline service to Astoria. It's really important how you ask the question and who you ask the question. So just those are lessons I've learned in the past. And I want to be careful not to take the results of this kind of a survey as a gospel on what will happen. And so I just want to remind the members that we are up against a very sophisticated political entity that really does game the system well.
Thanks, Ken. And I think the survey results were like I said, when Pete asked the same question, essentially, there's no glimmer of assumption that 96% of the customer base, of 66,000 households that take service, there's not going to be 60,000 households that sign up. That's for sure. And the survey, we're not trying to interpret the survey to tell us that. I think what we understand is this is a service that some community members really want, and a lot of community members really want to take advantage of. And we want to know what they want out of the service. So the choir, in the sense of who, if we're talking to the choir, we want to know what the choir wants and what materials do the choir want in their program, and what rate are they willing to pay for that program, and what's the service frequency. That's one of our biggest takeaways, really, is the frequency conversation, which was very loud and clear in the survey. Was I don't think people are not telling us they need it as frequently as we might have assumed otherwise. So how do we incorporate that into how we design it? Do we make sure that it's available more on demand and it costs less over time if someone's only going to take advantage of it every other month? And so those kinds of things incorporate into how we think about the program that we're going to deliver to those folks that really want the service. This is not a service that every household needs or wants, and we don't want to raise rates on everybody to deliver this service to the 10, maybe 15% of the customer base that really wants it. So we want to make sure that it's available to those that want it, and we want to make sure we deliver something that meets their needs. And that was, I think, the intent of our survey here. So I appreciate the comments, and I think it's really important. And what's most important is how we interpret it. And I appreciate the conversation.
So can we go back to, I think, Jacob, who had a comment to add? Does Hannah have to incorporate him? Or somebody?
Yes, they had to unmute me.
Yeah.
No, I just had a question, and it's about the survey. And as I understand, the survey self-selective and such, but it was really users of the system, meaning residents, right? It was all, and the thing I guess my question was, in going forward with a service like this, would it be a good idea to see what other users of our waste stream, how they would rank items and what items are common? And I guess my concern was, I think the survey said number 1 was like plastic bags, and number 2 was like takeout clamshells. And this is gonna sound really silly, right? Can I turn my camera on? Can you guys see me, or no? Is that not allowed?
Go ahead and turn your camera on.
Okay.
It should work fine.
Let's see, camera, Q&A, mute.
Should be down on the lower left of your screen.
I just have the mute, unmute.
Maybe you could promote him as a panelist, Aaron, for real quick.
Yeah, just one.
Okay.
And you can demote me right after. It's great.
Well,
So
not
what do
letting
you
me promote, sorry.
do? What's your background, Jacob?
Oh, I'm just a resident in urban unincorporated Washington County. I learned that tonight. This is great. I knew I was incorporated, but now I'm urban unincorporated. So no, I just I don't know. I use this.
I think he's coming in as a panelist.
Am I back?
Yes. Do you have a camera function now? There you are.
All right.
Yep, there you are.
So getting back to my question. So I made this Venn diagram, and this is going to sound super weird, but this is like, I was thinking about it when you're talking about the items, right? So here's like the items that people think, like, we want to get this out of the waste stream. And then here's the items that like the DEQ says, like, these are the most important things. And then here's like the hauler. And then here's like the actual landfill, and there's like the small sliver. And I just wanted to show you guys, I was just thinking about that. So the survey was like just to these users. And while like, I think plastic grocery bags are horrible, and I don't know why the county hasn't banned them, whatever. But like maybe the DEQ and the landfill, they have, can everybody see that okay? Is that weird? All right, that's just what I wanted to show you guys. But no, I had a question. Will there be a survey going forward to the hauler or the DEQ to see what they would rank, and if we could use their feedback to help better frame a collection service that would accommodate things that they don't want to see in the landfill. Does that make sense? Is that
totally? Thanks, Jacob. And
yeah, you can demote me now. It's okay.
It's fine. You're fine. We try to at least try to make these as formal as we can, because conversation is what's most important. So I can speak to it a little bit. The collection service industry has definitely been involved in the conversation, and they largely are interested in and willing to provide the service that the community wants them to provide, and the community members want them to provide. And Vinod here represents Far West Recycling, and they are a recycling processing facility. And so Far West Recycling and those processing facilities are linked to kind of understanding what are their markets available to collect, and where can we take these materials. So that's definitely part of the conversation. And I think for the DEQ, it's, we're moving into the implementation and the planning for Senate Bill 582. And I don't know if you're aware of that. It's the Recycling Modernization Act that was approved by the legislature last year. And there's a huge framework that goes into selecting what's going to be in the mixed recycling. We're going to ask producers to help identify those materials that have markets, ask them to help pay for those markets, help make sure that those markets are responsible. And so that's going to be a really big statewide conversation that's going to be happening over the next 3 years. So I think that's going to influence all of our programs, and that has the potential to influence this type of a program as well. So I think it's a good comment and really interesting standpoint. So thanks for chiming in.
Yeah, and in fact, the committee, if you're really interested in all this stuff, because you sat through the whole meeting, is looking for more public members. So if you want to be a member on the committee, because I'm leaving in a few months, so I just want to put that in there.
Ken's recruiting.
I'm recruiting.
Yeah, thank you. So I see 2 more folks in the attendee pool, and so maybe we want to.
Peter, did you want to respond to that question as well? I thought I saw your hand go up. No, okay.
So are there more people in the attendee pool who want to comment?
Yes, the next person who had their hand up is Nanette Ladew, and I will promote her.
Okay, unmute yourself and you're on.
I believe I did. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. So I'm certainly not against our haulers finding ways to get more into the recycling game than the garbage disposal game. But in my perspective, having more people contribute to this type of service, I think actually promotes better sort of competition in it. And what I've seen, I'm just a regular community member. I would love to have Ridwell in this area. I was kind of shocked when I heard that they got poo-pooed the first go around. But I have a friend that in Portland that participates. And the one thing I think that an organization like either James Recycling, which I participate in their recycling efforts that they have occasionally, and something like Ridwell, is they also can target certain things that maybe are too small of a market for the haulers to consider doing on a regular basis. When I hear my friend talk about, oh yeah, on this particular occasion, they're taking this back. On this particular occasion, they're taking this back. They kind of have their highlighted recycle items of the month. And I think that's where a service like Ridwell can play an important part into people's desire for disposing or recycling things rather than have them go in the landfill. As well, I used to recycle quite a bit of stuff at Far West. I used to go to their depot. But when they decided there wasn't a large enough market for something, they stopped taking things. And I think smaller organizations like Ridwell or James Recycling or even PlanetCon, they can maybe find other avenues of recycling that maybe don't have the same high as market. I know market's the wrong word, I'm sorry. But that like Far West would be looking for someone that could take a large quantity of something, whereas maybe somebody like Ridwell or James Recycling can find someone else to partner with that's maybe smaller. And I think that's a good thing for the community. So, I would applaud if the haulers found avenues to do other recycling, but to shut out an entire other organization doesn't seem quite right. Honestly, if people don't want to use Ridwell and there isn't enough market for them out here, they aren't going to be motivated to stay anyway. So I would say let the people use their dollars to make this choice rather than the county choosing for them. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bernard, do you want to speak to Far West a little bit? or-
There's some truth in what she says. If there's too small of an item, we can't scale it up very well. But a lot of the items that we stopped taking was because we didn't have faith in those markets at the time. So some of the things that were popular with people, we said, there's things maybe don't have well-maintained markets, or they're going places they shouldn't. And so that was a big impetus why we cut some items. And then things like styrofoam that we used to take, when Agilix came in, they're doing it for free, and we'd have to charge you. It didn't really make a lot of sense for us to do that, but there has to be some scalability for our type of operation. So that's where we're different than like James or somebody. And we do work with people that do gather, do collections, and try to accommodate that as much as we can with our materials. So it's not all. There's a lot of layers as to why we do take a material at the depot or not.
Thank you, Bernard. Thought we had one more.
We do, just one moment. We have Claire Morgan.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. That it seems that I agree with Annette. It seems that there is a place for all supporters in this. And when I first heard about this, it sounded to me like a monopoly, that the haulers were trying to squeeze out a company. And we've been using Ridwell for a long time, almost since they started. It's been about a year or so. And we have found that we now have places for all the items that we know they take on a regular basis. And we use them almost every 2 weeks. Every once in a while, I'll check out and just say that we don't need them that 1 week, but just the items, then I know that the items are something is being done with them. We're not just putting them out there to be recycled and then they're dumped in the landfill, because I have read that is happening with a lot of the recycled items that we turn in. So I feel strongly that if a company comes in and they want to provide a service, and especially the service that people really like, I have relatives in Portland, and they have used it and really like it, and I know 2 or 3 other people that are jumping into it, and to take it away seems to me that is a monopoly, and we are not given the choice, and we should be given the choice to use a service. So thank you.
Thanks, Claire. I would like to just make sure that we and the community members understand that when you recycle something in your mixed recycling and it's accepted in the mixed recycling and it's the right material, it's getting recycled. There was some disruption in the markets when China stopped collecting materials from the West, and there was a period of time where there was some concern about markets, but that is the fundamental responsibility of our recycling program, and we need to make sure that there's confidence in that, because what's collected in your roll card, if it's supposed to be in your roll card, it's getting recycled. And Vinod, maybe you can speak to that a little bit too.
I was just going to kind of echo what you're saying. There's a reason, you saw the Modernization Act, the Senate Bill 5. Part of that is making a list, making sure the list is comprehensive, and why is the material go in there? Is there a market for it? Is it recognizable? Is it easily to sort out? There's things that belong in the curb because they have solid markets, and there's things that maybe don't have a solid of a market, or they're not suited for sorting. So like electronics is an example. They're good recycled markets for those, but you wouldn't want to put it in the curbside because of things like battery fires and destruction and things like that. So yeah, if it's on the list and it's going, the everybody who's involved in the sorting and the processing is doing their very best to get that to a responsible end market. So that when the disruption happened, it was a supply and demand thing, and that's sort of why your costs went up, because all of a sudden this unending supply had half the market taken out, and that kind of capsized the processing being covered by the commodity value. So I don't know if that helps or not, but if
Yeah.
it's if you're putting a PET bottle in there, we're not throwing it away. We're trying to get it to market.
And you know, one of the things that I just think it's important for us as a committee to talk about this and think about it is one of the things that concerns me about this conversation too is this. There's this undertone of a lack of trust in the solid waste system, and I think that's dangerous because this system is responsible, and we're proud of our system in Oregon, and we're collecting a lot of material for recycling. And when there's no haulers have any advantage, or there's no incentive for a hauler to collect recycling and throw it in the dump. It's illegal in the state of Oregon for someone to collect something as recycling and then throw it away. And we watch those things, and the DEQ watches those things, and Metro watches those things. So those facilities are audited. Those when MRFs send out bales, there's standards for what's in those bales, and that material is we're confident that material is being collected and it's being recycled. And we're going to be even more confident in that when we get Senate Bill 582 in place, and we have support from processors to make sure that they're following those materials, not just to markets, but responsible markets. They're not being dumped on other communities in other parts of the world, and they're being managed as we expect them to be.
And we do send transactional data to government bodies, and we do annual reporting of the material and did general destinations. It might not say the customer, but it'll say the region where it went. So there's a lot of layers that are only going to increase more in the next few years, but there are safeguards right now. So,
and if you got your hand up,
I do. I just want to comment that garbage and recycling and what have you is a public policy group. That's what we are, and we are not specifically talking about Ridwell. We have to put in place regulations that anybody out there, you can't just go out and buy a pickup truck and decide you're going to be in the selective recycling business and never tell anybody what you're doing with it. We want to make sure that the public policy is followed, and that requires some kind of control or registration to make sure. We also want to make sure the service is available to anybody, not just a select few. So I think that the committee is looking at the big picture and essentially looking out there and saying, how would a bad actor behave, and how do we keep bad actors out of the mix of things? And that's part of the program that rarely gets discussed, but the staff focuses in on that quite effectively. So I think that there's more to it than just do we love Ridwell or not. That said,
I think we have one more hand up, Ken.
Do we?
If we're
Okay.
offering people the opportunity to speak.
Who wanted to speak? Are you bringing them in, Aaron? Yeah. Okay.
Hi, my name is Carl, and we live in unincorporated Washington County, and we've been actually recycling since the 70s. And I was raised on a farm, so we were reusing and reducing and repurposing decades before it became a hashtag and a brand. So, but even with that experience, we find that as customers of Ridwell, there are things that they're taking that we really appreciate. And it's not just the convenience of a service like that coming to the door, it's the environmental savings of dozens or hundreds of people not having to drive to a recycling center and having the exhaust of their car go into the atmosphere. So yeah, I do love the convenience because you just drop it in the box, and they have an incredible program. It's very easy, it's simple, it's straightforward. They explain it really well. And if the direction of this committee goes to Pride Services doing that, I hope that Pride can mimic that convenience and clarity as well, if that's what happens. I also want to say that industries change over time. Those of us that remember the early 70s when the Japanese cars came over, suddenly the American automotive industry was turned upside down. And nowadays we call that a disruptor. And the banking industry has been impacted by online banking and apps, and Geico and Progressive have turned the insurance industry on its head. And all of these situations in general, I think we can agree, have created a better customer situation, better service, more affordable pricing. And I was going to add in the airline industry, but that's kind of a whole different thing. That was deregulated in 1978. I worked for an airline in the 90s. But still, that's a different scale of operation where they can't serve smaller communities. But
your model is quite good, and I want to point out that while they deregulated airlines in terms of marketing and pricing, they did not deregulate the airlines in terms of what kind of licenses the pilots and mechanics had to have, or how the airplanes were maintained. So you can have a mix, and you don't have to have either completely cowboy economy or a strongly regulated and managed economy. You can have pieces of it being managed. And the same thing is true of, say, the medical industry, where we have very strict rules for what qualifies for it to be a doctor and what have you, without asking, where they set up their office or what their pricing is or anything.
Right. And I actually work for a major health system in the region, and 7-8 years ago when Zoom Care came along, they turned everybody on their nose because of what they were offering.
Right.
So I think competition is good. Disruptors are good. A company like Ridwell is really good to hopefully move the county in a direction of having some sort of hybrid operation, and maybe even allow more competition. So those are my thoughts. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. And I just want to make another thing, the sense that I got, and I think this is important for us to clarify it from the committee too, is the Board of Commissioners are the elected officials in the county. The Board of Commissioners are the elected body that has the authority to make those policy changes and those policy decisions. I know that was confused in our recent conversation because of a single clause in Washington County Code that said, this exemption request that was specifically requested by Ridwell required a positive recommendation from this committee. So that put this committee in a weird spot, in a spot that is maybe was uncomfortable for me, I think, personally, as being a part of this committee and a lot of committee members. That's not necessarily this committee's role. That's not this committee's job in most instances. And I think that's probably a section of county code that we might want to look at revisiting, so we don't put ourselves in this position again in the future if we're in there changing the county code. Our job is to advise the Board of Commissioners, and that I think should remain our mission. We don't have to always agree with the Board of Commissioners, but we give them our advice, and they appoint everybody on this committee to be that feedback and that advice loop. So what we're going to be talking about in March is not approving the program. What we're going to be talking about in March is whether or not you recommend the Board of Commissioners approves that program. And I think that's really important for us all to remember, and especially for community members to understand. And I appreciate that, Carl, and I think that's a good opportunity for us to remind ourselves of that and make sure that everybody in the community understands that, that's listening to. Okay, I don't see any other hands. Any other questions from committee members? Thanks all. I appreciate the conversation, and I will, if it's okay with you, Ken, pass it on to Kathy to start shifting into the other topic.
Yes, please, Kathy, the calendar.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. If it doesn't work, I'll call on one of my fellow staff people. Can you all see that? Just a sec. Can you see
I can see it.
Yep, I see it.
Okay, good. I got to get rid of all the extraneous things floating around my screen. Okay, so when we redid the bylaws this year, one of the things that we wanted to do was provide some structure and kind of a roadmap of the kinds of things that we want to bring. Either we have to bring because it's required by code or rule, or it's more discretionary, but we think it would be valuable to get committee feedback over time. So I took a stab. It would have been in January, but that meeting was canceled. So beginning with this month, I took a stab at lining out what made sense with us in a 2-hour time frame for each meeting. So moving to I thought I'd just like maybe go through the high level, what's in there, and then take questions on it if there are any. One of the things that I wanted to point out is I noted action versus discussion. Action requires a vote. And one of the requirements around voting is we have to have a quorum. And a quorum is 5 members or more. And so when I send out my pre-meeting notices and I ask you all to respond and let me know if you're attending, often it's because I need to know if we'll have a quorum or if we need to adjust an item that's coming up that needs a vote. So it's a plug to please try and let me know if you are coming. This time there were several of y'all that didn't, so it's just my push for the future. Next month we're going to talk about the rules and the rates around an additional recycling collection program. We hoped, as Tom mentioned, to have the rules posted well before the meeting so that we can take public comment if there are any, as well as give you all more time to actually take a look. We also are interested in a rate review primer because collection rates are coming up, and that's something we do annually, and Erin spearheads that, but it's pretty complicated. There's a lot of piece parts, and we have a lot of new members, so we thought it would be good to let kind of walk through at a high level what goes on in rate review. April probably will be Chair Foot's last meeting as chair. And I want to make sure that we all recognize that he has volunteered for a very long time. And it's been very much appreciative on all of staff's part, and I hope the committee members' part. So we're going to do that. We're also going to do elections. We have a vacant vice chair role as well as the new chair. And after this meeting, I'd like to take nominations. You can email me if you want to nominate someone or if you want to nominate yourself, but either in probably in March, or if not March, then in April, we'll have a discussion about how, since it's your committee, how you would like elections to go. The bylaws do state they have to be community members, so the public members. So hopefully.
Sorry, Vinod.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but then we're also going to talk about some strategic planning that our division's going through, as well as another update on our rate equity analysis that we brought to the committee a few months ago. In May, I wanted to note that it's 1 week later than it normally would be. We wanted to have a little bit of extra time for rate review internally. So hopefully all of you can still make it on the 3rd Thursday instead of the 2nd Thursday. We hope the board will have appointed the new community member that's taking Ken's place. And then there's solid waste and recycling collection rates. And then our education and outreach folks do a great Beyond the Bin presentation. So it'll be, we thought that would be a good meeting to have that. And then in June, it's some more overviews and education and outreach and seeking the committee's input on some of these programs that we're rolling out within the community. And then in July, like the Hillsborough 10-year Hillsborough landfill franchise agreement renewal will be up. It expires toward the end of August, so we have to have enough time for the GRAC to vote on it, and then it would go to the board and hopefully get renewed in August. Normally in the summer, we cancel one meeting. I just arbitrarily picked the August one. It's subject to being back on the schedule, but for now, it gives us all 1 month off in the summertime. And then one of the things that's new in the bylaws is a commitment that we devote 1 meeting time for training. And what that actually looks like, I don't know right now, but September looked like a good meeting time for that. So we'll be developing a PowerPoint and some, what does it really mean to serve as on a volunteer committee, and what is your role, and what are you looking at, and how does code fit in, and all of those things at that time. And then also an overview around emergency preparedness. October and November is to be determined. I'm not sure yet, but we will have items on those meetings. And then in December, we are reinstituting certificate review. We have 8 certificated haulers, nine certificated, and the code actually requires that a review is done. Every year we do a group, 2 in each year, and they're designated group A, B, C, and D. And it's actually in code that it goes to the advisory committee for review. So, and it has to be done by the end of the year. So I scheduled that for December. So if there's any questions, be happy to answer. I can stop sharing my screen. Then I can see you all.
Oh, sorry, Kathy. I also want to make sure that if there's topics that you all are interested in, that we can get that up. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
That's okay. I was just going to say, it's hard to stare at the screen and look at your notes, but yeah, one of the pieces that's not here is I'm really seeking community committee input. If there's something that you would like to see on a future meeting, you can certainly approach the chair or me or Tom or both of us, and we can have a discussion and see where it might fit. We are definitely open to future topics. It can be a challenge to come up with new stuff, and we're not sure sometimes what the interest level is. So definitely. But until, I took a stab at it just to kind of eyeball it, because I think in the past we've been reactive, and we're trying to be more proactive.
So what's on your list? I know you guys have lists about stuff you think is cool, or want to learn more about, or want to talk about, or want us to think about or look into, those kinds of things. There's things that come, through that are important, that we, like what Kathy laid out, but we also want to make sure that you all have the opportunity to provide some direction and guidance for where we go as a committee too.
You can certainly think about it and let us know. One thought is, how can you access a living calendar that may get updated over time? So we're thinking of things around that, but for now, we're pretty packed all the way to like June, but then we've got a lot of open space after that. So appreciate a little bit of thought on your all part, and
Hannah, so you got your hand up?
Yeah, one thing I was just curious about is what kind of resources are available for businesses or organizations in the county regarding like LEED certification or other green certification processes. It could be for individuals too, but I'm not sure what kind of support the county or individual cities within the county provide for that.
So one thing we could do is in the past, we've had guest speakers come in. So we could certainly have our county sustainability group or some of those folks come in.
Green business coordinator, Jen Stefanik.
Our own resources. I was just going to say we have a very good staff that could maybe come and do a focus presentation around that and allow for questions if that's something that you would find interesting. I've thought about, I don't have it here, but over in the past, people often still have questions about the bottle bill and the changes in the bottle bill. And, we could get those folks to come, and it doesn't always have to just be internal. We definitely can reach out to our partners and see if they'd be willing and have the time to come and provide some information and allow for questions, and if there's interest.
Moving on.
I was just gonna ask, and maybe you said this, I was doing something else, but I know in the Metro RWAC, they kind of do a system overview. Is that something you were planning on doing, or like how Metro works with local governments and the city, how everybody kind of plays the same box?
That's certainly something we could consider. There's sometimes where I'm not even sure where the intersections happen. There can be a lot of overlap. So, I think that might be a really good discussion, especially for all the new members on the committee, just because it's hard to know where, like, who has authority over collection and who does disposal, and how DEQ, a lot of our program is specified in state law. And so I will definitely make a note of that, Manon.
I know I've already had the opportunity to provide input, Kathy, but I think we should at least have at this point, an annual and no less than check-in from, maybe invite DQ to give us an update on the Recycling Modernization Act.
Yeah,
and planning.
I was going to add that too. The high look at what's going on.
Right now we have it in July, so we do have a placeholder for it, because we know that we were kind of letting the truth and labeling piece get done, and there'll be that many more months sort of further along. So that's going to be really important. And as Tom said, that could be something that's more than in the beginning. We might need a lot of sort of updates around.
And even though maybe it's happening, but you mentioned we kind of danced around some of the pieces, but maybe going over why truth and labeling is important, and why it's a piece of that, or why it's an issue, and why the list is important, and things like that.
Yeah, I think those are great ideas. I think sometimes it's a matter of timing where we can get it on the annual calendar, but we got a couple of good months toward the end of the year where, at least as it stands right now, we have nothing required by code that would have, that might take up time. So, and I think the conversations around SB 582 issues easily could be a whole meeting. There's some really interesting stuff and really important, and lots of changes, so in a good way. It's also a short session, and there are some bills like the mattress EPR bill that is going on that may get passed this year. I don't know. So exactly. So there may be more sort of like a standing item that we, when available, we can do a legislative update as well.
Attendee commented about the 2030 regional waste plan, and we recently had a couple of presentations from Metro, but it might be nice to get an update on their reports and indicators work that they're doing on implementation update for the regional waste plan. So it's a good suggestion. Thank you.
And some more information on how the multifamily, that whole endeavor is going on. That might be interesting to see, to hear from Metro more sort of down the road too. So I think they're decaling now. I'm not sure, but there's lots of stuff going on, and in the past, we haven't had as much emphasis on bringing in information, and we're really making an effort now. We think it's really important, and we really value your folks' input as well. So that's all I got on the calendar unless someone else has a question.
Thanks, everybody. All right, Ken, I think that puts us to the last oral communication. Double
Is it-
check.
Has anybody asked to oral communicate?
Yeah, looks like we got two. Aaron, do you want to proctor it?
Yeah, just a moment. We have Jacob with his hand up first. Just one moment.
You guys, oh, yeah, my microphone's unmuted. Great. Just a question. I was looking at the calendar. Is there a period or time set aside for citizen or user input for the rates?
Yes, thanks, Jacob. Good question. So this committee reviews the rates in May, as Kathy pointed out on her calendar. That meeting date is May 19th. This year, we're going to make sure we incorporate some more public notice for the review and recommendation on solid waste collection rates. So if you send your email, let me see, I'm trying to give you an email address. If you send your email to recycle@co.washington.or.us, we can make sure to get you on the interested parties mailing list if you're not already on that. And we will be sending out at least a week's notice with the rate review recommendation. And that is an opportunity for you to see what is the rate review results were and what the recommendation is. And this committee is the opportunity to provide some of that feedback. There's the public comment periods at the beginning and end of this meeting. And depending on the chair's wishes, the chair may allow comment during the agenda item as well. We'll also be sending notice a week or two before the Board of Commissioners reviews and considers rates, and there's a similar opportunity with the board in that meeting. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. Just wanted to make sure I get in if there's a work session to review or add input.
Absolutely.
For this committee and then for the board, the Washington County Board of Commissioners.
Yep. So make sure you send an email if you're not already signed up for that list. We'll make sure you get added to it so you get made note of those opportunities. Thanks.
And that was recycle@co.washington.or.us.
That's it.
And then just one last question. I know you mentioned the food scraps, the composting for businesses coming online about April of this year. If I wanted to bring up a topic for residential food composting scraps, is that something I would email Kathy or is that something I would email you guys separately if I wanted to maybe talk about it?
Yes, absolutely. Feel free to email us. We can chat about it. I can give you a quick kind of overview. Food scraps, residential food scraps has been limited over the last, I would say 5-10 years to processing capacity. One of the only facilities that accepts type 3 feedstock, which is yard debris mixed with food scraps, is the Recology Organics North Plains facility. And that facility had been processing much of the material from the city of Portland, and then recently also Hillsborough and Beaverton. Unincorporated Washington County's customer base is about 66,000 households, so it's a pretty big plug of material for us to turn on. And the facility hasn't necessarily had the capacity or the resiliency to accept that much more material coming from this customer base. We did just go through a renewal process, and this committee recommended renewal of that facility's franchise agreement. And part of their plan for future is some system improvements into a new mass bed composting process, which they're anticipating will open up capacity. So we're optimistic that we're going to have an opportunity to re-review that system capacity and potentially bring something back forward as an opportunity for review to this committee and the Board of Commissioners. So I actually we're going to start conversations with Recology, try to understand what the timelines are on their system improvements and really kind of map out when that might be an opportunity and start looking at what that would mean for the system and the costs for the ratepayers. But feel free to reach out to Kathy or I, and we would be happy to talk with you more about it. Thanks, Jacob.
You're welcome.
Okay, and Aaron, you want to bring whoever else was out there?
Yep, just one moment. We have Caleb Weaver.
Of course we do.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to just respond to some of the comments that were made earlier in the meeting. Just wanted to set the record straight on a couple of items. I think first and most importantly, Ridwell is supportive of new regulations that achieve the county's priority goals of ensuring that everybody is operating in a way that is consistent with the policy goals that the county has identified, whether that be serving the entire county, ensuring that materials are being handled appropriately and going to the correct place, that the vehicles are insured. All of those items are things that we fully support regulations around and have put forward proposed ideas on what those regulations could look like. And so we just really want to make sure that everybody's very clear. We are not opposed to regulation. We are not opposed to oversight of the business and are in no way advocating for a Wild West type situation or a situation where Ridwell is somehow operating outside of the system. We have maintained communications with the county throughout this process. As I think many of you know, ultimately when those discussions were unable to go any further, that is when we shut down our service until the temporary rule was passed. And so again, I want to make sure everybody's clear. We very much support new regulations, and from a policy perspective, we would certainly encourage you to not go the path of just having the haulers provide an optional service for items that are not part of the standard service, but again, set up an alternate process such as a permit or some other system that enables other players, other new ideas, other innovators to come in and be able to try to move things forward in a way that just will not be possible if it is in the highly regulated monopoly system. I also want to be clear that Ridwell had absolutely nothing to do with the survey. We did not distribute the survey. We did not promote the survey. We did not let anybody know about the survey. And so any suggestion that we somehow manipulated the results is just simply not based in any fact. We had absolutely nothing to do with that. The emails that were sent to the elected officials and staff regarding the situation with us was a result of us letting people know what the situation was, and they had our customers and others who are supportive of a service like ours being available had the opportunity to send an email. And that is the extent of what we did. So while I appreciate the notion that we are somehow a sophisticated political actor, we are a small Seattle-based company of a few dozen employees outside of our warehouse workers and drivers that merely let folks in the community know what was going on. We have had no contact with anybody who spoke here tonight, have not engendered anything. These are citizens who are interested in the service and interested in a policy that would encourage innovation instead of focusing just on a monopoly type approach. So we look forward to the opportunity to hopefully continuing to be a part of the discussion. Unfortunately, the elected officials are still continuing to not take any of our phone calls. And so thus we appreciate the opportunity to say a few words and engage in a good faith policy discussion about how we do achieve these policy goals. Reuse is at the top of what we're trying to do. We are not trying to encourage just management of downstream materials. What we're trying to do is encourage change in purchasing habits, encourage reuse, look for those opportunities to really educate people about the environmental impact of the purchasing decisions they make by helping people understand these are the exact same goals that the county is trying to achieve, and we continue to believe that we would be much stronger, all of us, if we were working together, us, the haulers, the county, and others, to achieve our goals as opposed to working at loggerheads. So I think more people trying to swim in the right direction, the better off we're going to be. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to respond to some of the comments.
Caleb, I just want to say thanks and remind everybody that this committee is not making the decision on whether or not Ridwell or other providers provide that service. This is a policy decision that the elected officials of the Washington County make. This committee is an advisory body, so I appreciate the feedback, and we always have the opportunity for comment, but I don't want anybody on the committee to feel that they have to shoulder that burden of that decision, because that's the decision of the elected officials. So please keep that in mind as we navigate this. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Were there any other hands come up? Thank you for attending, and we'll see you at the next meeting.
Thank you, everybody.
We
Have a
are
good-
adjourned.
Have a good evening.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the February 10th meeting of the Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee. Just as a reminder, this session was recorded. You will find it posted to our website within 1 week. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Bye.